Chapter 11, The Wailing Wall.
Rachel, can you hear me?
Yes, Mom.
Your father and I will be at the Kotel, the Wailing Wall. Please meet us there by 6 p.m.
One of the main roads around Jerusalem was closed due to a landslide, so the taxi driver curved around various side roads to reach their destination. When Rachel got the call from her parents, she and Joel left the family estate once the week of Passover celebrations had ended. However, the following days after Passover caused Jerusalem to become more packed than ever due to Dr. Crowning's announcement to rebuild the temple. Security was heightened, roads were blocked, and crowds dominated the streets. Under the new political leadership, police quickly squelched any potential protests.
You will want to take these with you.
Yosef had said, handing Joel an expensive camera and a press pass.
These were dropped off for you by one of your news correspondents before your arrival. I believe his name was Judas.
Judas came here? I thought he was relocating with Tom in Texas.
Joel handled the new lightweight camera, the smallest one he had ever seen for newscasting. It would allow them to capture it all with almost nothing they would have to set up. Yosef also gave them plenty of shekels, cell phones, clothing, and anything else they needed. Daniel had objected at first, but Yosef insisted. Rebecca showered Rachel with the most beautiful dresses money could buy. Rachel felt like a princess when she tried on the sparkly blue dress.
You and Joel will have to spend some time going out on the town together,
She told Rachel.
There are many good places to eat here, you know.
She said. Rebecca smiled, remembering her and Yosef's early years together.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. These are so gorgeous.
She packed a few to take along on their trip and hoped that she would not have to stay away for too long. They all felt grateful and blessed to be so welcomed into a place they once were afraid to visit. Davy had stayed behind with Daniel and Chester to be more acquainted with the family, while Joel got Rachel back with her parents. Joel did not like the idea of being separated from Rachel. Neither knew what her parents had in mind for their permanent residence, since they had been away for so long. They too had lost all of their belongings back in Indiana. However, that was a minor loss, since they owned several houses in various countries. As their driver circled the streets, waving his hands and beeping at other drivers for not following proper directions, Joel and Rachel observed the jagged stone landscape. Graffiti littered the lower-lying areas, contrasting the clean white stone on the dominant buildings. Eventually, they could see a glistening golden dome, the Dome of the Rock next to the Wailing Wall. Tourists loaded the streets, and several vendors cluttered the ancient walkways with merchandise, ranging from local produce to t-shirts, one of which read, "Guns and Moses." Armored trucks lined one street, several carrying massively hewn stones. Armed guards were on every street corner, and most looked slightly younger than Joel and Rachel. They watched intensely as the soldiers forced a Palestinian teenager off the scene, shouting threats at the soldiers and the surrounding crowd.
Ah, another typical day in the city of Jerusalem,
Said the cab driver as he pulled to a stop. Joel thanked the driver and paid him with the shekels his uncle had given him earlier. As Joel and Rachel made their way through the tunneled alleyways, two small boys kicked a ball back and forth. They lost their ball and Joel recovered it for them. Both grinned, one timidly taking the ball from Joel's hands, and they returned to their play. Rachel smiled. Although Joel felt awkward in his new kippah, he admired how she looked in her new shawl from Aunt Rebecca. Several Jewish men, wearing black suits with black fedora hats, clung together as a collective group when they made their way past. Joel steadied his camera and filmed the sign that read, "Welcome to the Western Wall." As he and Rachel went through the security checkpoint with more armed guards, their press passes became necessary. Due to the news about the Third Temple, not everyone was allowed to go through. This was not a typical day in Jerusalem. Soon the area opened wide, where several people walked in different directions, forming small clusters. No sign of Rachel's parents yet. Joel checked the time.
Let's go this way, Rach.
Joel whispered as he got his camera out again. Joel immediately felt a special connection to this place. Despite the construction on the other side, it had a quiet calm that made it seem like they had left all the noise behind and entered a new realm. The wall stones were ancient and massive. Plants had grown through portions of it, and there was a fresh pile where one stone had given way into collapse. Some men were gathered around it, trying to decide how to lift the colossal stone out of the area. After filming, Joel put down his camera and grabbed a strip of paper to write a prayer. Rachel joined him in doing so. Both approached the sacred wall, but a police officer briskly approached Rachel.
You must visit the women's section.
He said abruptly.
This is a violation of Israeli law.
His friendly face was beginning to harden due to daily conflicts. He directed her to the opposite side. As she and Joel separated awkwardly, both felt they would have to learn much about the laws and culture of their new home. They slipped their written prayers into a crevice, each saying their silent prayers. Afterward, they found one another in the crowd and interviewed the men about the fallen stone.
Some woman prayed on the egalitarian platform and the stone just gave way. She was nearly hit, but somehow she was able to step safely aside. There are no plans to remove this sacred wall. Perhaps the vibrations of the construction are too close. No other stone seems out of place, so it should be safe now.
When they finished the interview and toured the area, Rachel noticed it was well past 6 o'clock, and storm clouds began forming. Where were her parents? Just then, she looked to her left and thought she saw a familiar, unpleasant figure. It looked like the man with that twisted face, or could it be?
Ah!
Rachel grimaced and jumped far enough to draw a few strange looks from the crowd.
What is it, Rach? What's wrong?
I thought I saw
The man was no longer in view.
that man. You know, the one with that strange face.
From the cornfield back in Indiana?
I know it sounds ridiculous, just forget it.
She turned away.
No, I believe you.
Joel drew her near his side.
It's just... Why would he be here?
Then Rachel heard a familiar voice with a Russian accent.
Rachel, there you are.
It was her dad, Ivan Kozlov. He reached over and hugged her. Relief spread over Rachel's face.
Dad, Mom, I was wondering where you were.
As she returned his embrace, she noticed that he seemed stiff. Her parents looked all business in sharp suits next to Rachel's flowing dress.
We have missed you, my dear.
Said Mr. Kozlov.
And Joel, so nice to see you. Thank you for delivering Rachel to us, safe and sound.
No problem. It's good to see you, too.
Said Joel as he conformed to his firm handshake.
You look tired, Dad.
Rachel said.
Oh, I'm just fine.
He replied. However, Rachel knew that was a lie. He always tried to make her feel as if everything was fine, but underneath it all, he was always hiding something. Her mother changed the subject.
I see you still have a camera,
said Mrs. Kozlov. Her accent still held onto a hint of her Indian background, and her skin was darker than Rachel's. When standing next to his wife, Mr. Kozlov seemed pale with his blue eyes and blondish hair that was beginning to show signs of gray on the sides. Mrs. Kozlov's green eyes seemed to penetrate as if she were scanning Joel's character.
Yes, the station just got us all set for international work.
Well, what perfect timing. I'm sure you will have plenty of action to film around here,
said Mr. Kozlov, patting Joel's back.
Oh, what a lovely necklace. Rachel, where did you get this?
Said Mrs. Kozlov as she reached for the chain around Rachel's neck, handling it delicately. The sapphire stones glistened so brilliantly that they momentarily blinded Mrs. Kozlov's eyes, causing her to drop the necklace back onto Rachel's chest.
Why, my topaz necklace pales in comparison.
She winced as she stepped back and readjusted her chain.
Joel's mother gave it to me.
Rachel flinched at this, wondering why they did not address the topic of Joel's mother first in their conversation. A simple condolence to Joel in person would have been nice instead of safe conversations about simple observations of their accessories. Rachel was secretly pleased that Ishani could no longer dodge the subject. However, Mr. Kozlov spoke up first.
Such a pity to hear about your mother, Joel. We are very sorry to hear about your family's loss,
said Mr. Kozlov. His eyes were genuine as he patted Joel's shoulder.
Thank you,
said Joel, looking down.
Yes, we want to help in any way we can, dear,
said Mrs. Kozlov. Rachel recognized the fake tone in Ishani's voice, but Joel did not seem to notice. She felt a knot forming in the pit of her stomach.
I appreciate your concern,
said Joel.
We have family here, so we should be fine.
Such strong character,
said Mrs. Kozlov, smiling.
Well, are you ready to go, Rachel? Your father and I have a meeting soon.
Well, where are you staying now?
Rachel asked.
We are staying in Jerusalem, but headed to France later tonight. That's where our main headquarters are, and we have to report on the work we've done here in Jerusalem since Israel is now affiliated with PRISM,
said Mr. Kozlov. Mrs. Kozlov was growing impatient.
We really should be going. We have to meet with the others returning on our same flight.
She grabbed Mr. Kozlov's arm, preparing to leave, but Rachel stood still.
Are you coming with us, Rachel?
Just then the ground began to shake. Joel and Rachel clung together as the ground continued to shift. Mr. and Mrs. Kozlov grabbed them as more stones from the Wailing Wall began to tumble.
We have to get out of here now!
Shouted Mr. Kozlov. They all ran toward the entrance, but it was so crowded that it was useless to try to exit. The stone tunnels did not look safe either, so they stayed in the central area. The earth began to crack, causing the familiar sound of rolling thunder. The dome of the rock began to sway. Joel, Rachel, and other tourists began to pray that the Wailing Wall would not totally collapse, and the rumbling subsided. When they looked up, a few jagged clouds dispersed immediately.
Oh, thank you, God,
said Rachel.
Amen to that,
replied Joel.
Is everyone all right?
Asked Mr. Kozlov. They all looked around, and although shaken, no one seemed injured.
It seems we're all fine, Ivan,
said Mrs. Kozlov, brushing dust from her dark suit. Joel looked at his camera and discovered that he had captured most of the footage since he had left his camera on.
You got it, didn't you?
Said Rachel. Joel nodded.
We can use this.
The crowd around them was stunned, but began gathering themselves back to their routines.
Would you please give us just a few minutes to interview some of these people, Mom?
We really must go, Rachel,
said Mrs. Kozlov. Mr. Kozlov held up his hand.
Please wait just a moment, Ishani. I can make a call. How about we grab a quick bite to eat, and they will be finished by that time, huh? Let's relax for a moment,
said Mr. Kozlov, dialing his phone. He spoke a few words in French to his associate and hung up. Then he and Mrs. Kozlov told them to be careful and headed off to eat. Rachel was relieved as she and Joel headed in the opposite direction to interview some people who were still looking into the sky. A few spoke English. From his upbringing, Joel could speak a little Hebrew as well. Although her Hebrew was shaky, Rachel was educated enough in a few foreign languages, enabling her to conduct many interviews. Most of them said what they had expected since they all had the same experience. Tensions were rising around the Temple Mount, so they would have to hurry out for safety. However, before the police forced them out of the area, one man said,
Did you capture the city in the sky?
What?
Asked Joel.
Well, the city, it was floating in the sky before the shaking.
Joel ran back his camera. He did not realize that he had left it rolling the entire time, not just for the earthquake, but their entire visit to the Wailing Wall. However, when they met with Rachel's parents, the camera was angled just enough on his shoulder to capture the sky. Then they saw it, the same jagged city in the sky back home in Indiana. And a little distance behind Rachel was the man with the twisted face.